at least one more, if not two more episodes that I did not include in these notes. I figured this was good for tonight.
Yeah.
Should we? Man, it's too late now. Let people know we were starting early. Because, I hate for like 50, 60, 100 people to come in.
That's true.
8:30.
Well, surprise, we're early. And 5, 4, 3.
Welcome, everyone, and pull up a seat at the table. It's Lunchtime in Rome. Tonight's episode 284 is titled Noise, Part 1. Does this world seem like it's nothing but a lot of noise? Could that be by design? Why is that? We'll be talking about that at the table this evening. So pull up a seat and join us. First-time listeners can subscribe on your favorite podcast app or watch us live or later on YouTube at Lunchtime in Rome. Visit us at lunchtimeinrome.com, and while there, you can take our relational needs questionnaire. Please be sure to give us a like and follow on social media, and it'd be great if you gave us a 5-star review. Jay, what specifically is this podcast about?
At the table, we strive to love one another and help you to do the same. Some weeks, we will have someone join us so that you can get to know them and learn a little bit about yourself in the process. Other weeks, like this one, we dive into a topic. Romans 12:15 says to rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. That's what we do. So while it may not be 12:15 in Rome, we're treating it like it is lunchtime in Rome. Brian, I meant to step over the end of your beginning, but not by nearly as much as I did. So.
That's what it is.
Wow, that's... Sheesh.
I just want to know if Eric knows that he counts down like Christopher Walken. The 5. I can't do Christopher Walken, but it was great.
Well, I'm glad.
I'd like to hear more of your version of Christopher.
No, it's no good. It's no good.
I've already resisted making fun of him. I'm like, I can't beat him up in the first 35 seconds.
I did see something yesterday that was really interesting to me, and that was a picture of Chris's dad. And I know, Chris, you may or may not get into that larger story, but we got on the topic of your father.
Yeah.
And I just had no idea, like you guys know my dad.
Right? Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, and does anyone
really
really run her?
Certified
I think I do.
American softball referee, registered.
And he could have been in Vietnam. I don't know.
Not in the military.
Not in the military. That's what I'm saying.
They're just hanging out.
Just, I don't know. He could have, anyways. But yeah, I saw a picture of your dad, 2 pictures actually. And it was really interesting to kind of put context to your dad after knowing you for as long as I have.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that like, okay, that's a new piece of information I know about Chris.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And we picked those pictures. For those of you who don't know, my dad just passed away a little over a week ago. And so his obituary is out. You can look it up, by the way, at the Titusville. Wait, what's it called now? The Titusville
Times.
Times.
That's what it's called.
Journal.
Oh, you mean the actual paper? I thought you meant the
Yeah,
city.
because it's only online now. Because there used to be the Titusville Herald. That was the newspaper. And now it's the Titusville News Journal. That's what it is. The
Can I
Titusville
ask an
News Journal.
insensitive, not insensitive, we could argue about that, question?
Sure.
How expensive was that?
Oh. They put it on the website. Sorry, that's my thinking noise. They put it on the
Never heard you
website.
think before, Chris.
They put it on the
Which makes
website
sense.
and then publish it in like the weekly paper. That's
So there is
so
like
it
a
is a
weekly
paper.
circular.
yeah, it comes out on Fridays. There's a weekly actual physical paper. And it wasn't, I don't know, like $75, something like that.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay.
You thinking about doing an obituary for somebody recently in the future?
No, but like trays, which we trimmed a lot, I think was $750.
Wow.
And it was not long.
10 times as much.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're in the big city. of
Well,
Penn Hills.
Titusville
Well, it was
is
a daily paper.
Titusville's 10 times as cool as Pittsburgh. So yeah, that math didn't add up either.
And so how are things?
Things are good. And I say that in the sense that my time away, I had bereavement time in Titusville last week, which is great. I don't know if that's a perk of being a teacher. I'm sure lots of people get bereavement time, but I was going to say that it's very gracious. We get time to be away, deal with funeral things and family things. And it was a very healing week in Titusville. It was a very, just a very in a lot of ways a slow week, because usually when we go to Titusville, it's like it's whirlwind. We're up there for a day and a half or something, or less, or whatever, and it's like up and back. And this was like we were there for 3 solid days.
Where'd you stay?
So we normally, when we go up there, we stay at my mom's, but we wanted sort of like a separate base of operations for this time. We just wanted to be separate from everything, like just and do our own, things in our own way at our own pace. So there's a Quality Inn in Titusville now, so we stayed there.
On the river?
No,
Okay. What's that? Am I thinking of something else?
I don't know.
All right, never mind. No, I'm thinking of a different place.
Yeah, there's no river in
Yeah,
Titusville.
that's why
There's Oil Creek, but it's not on. I don't think it's on.
It's probably
doesn't matter
much.
But it was really good. Got
That's
to
awesome.
see lots of family, and especially my grandmother, who's still alive and doing awesome. Very sad, because this obviously is her son, her firstborn, that passed away. So that, there were a lot of those sort of moments. But in the end, it was like very cathartic and healing, and it was really. I felt better coming out of it than going.
I was going to say, you've mentioned cathartic now
Yeah.
twice. I've heard you say that word specifically twice. What is it about cathartic? Why was it cathartic?
I feel like it's a bit of a release, like the idea of you go into something, or I went into this, like I'm obviously mourning my dad and having to go back home and having to like see family and deal with the reality of it all. There's like an anxiety to that. There's like a worry or a stress to that. And then, but through the process and then coming out of it, I was like, wow, that was really good. So I guess that's what I mean by cathartic, like a heartfelt sort of free, like a lightness.
An unburdening.
Yes. That's a great way to put it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's great because it a lot of times can be very difficult and disastrous.
Oh, and much worse makes a bad time worse.
Yeah, and you also mentioned there doesn't seem to be like a lot of financial stuff or really family conflict, which
Right.
That's extremely helpful. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, you a lot of people have the loss of a loved one plus a lot of that other stuff, which
Right.
can
No,
be
we
the
only
worst.
have the awkwardness of distance, just the fact that he lived in Florida for the past, decade and a half or whatever. So that's just a sort of a practicality difficulty of it. But no, yeah, like other than that, it's good. No infighting, no.
Yeah, about as well as it could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I celebrate
Thanks for
that.
asking.
I have last week Abby had really brutal mouth surgery, and it's hard to watch your kid go through stuff that's painful. And I mean, I think for me, with my kids in pain, there's part of me that's like, you're going to go through a lot of pain in life, and so not that you want to see your kids go through pain, but okay, here's a major thing that's happening to you. And Abby took it like a champ. She what they did is they had to go in through her lower gum, like slice open her lower gum, go in and down and dig around, find a tooth that was in much further than they thought it was, pull it. When they pulled it, it broke in half.
Sure.
And so, I mean, she's still healing, and it was last Tuesday when we had this done, and she's still talking with a little bit of an issue, but the girl, like last Tuesday night, she was crying because of the pain, and then her jaw was all swollen, still a little bit, but overall she's doing well. She's on the mend. It was tough to watch her coming out of like laying in the bed and coming out of the anesthesia. She was, as soon like when we walked back at first, it was like, wow, that's my little girl. And she had a breathing tube on, and her head was cocked sideways, and she just had this expression on her face of pain. And you can, and then she starts coming out of it all, and like she's trying to rip away all the stuff. And I'm just like, oh man, my heart broke a little bit, and but she's on the mend, and that was a big thing for her. I'm glad we got it done.
It's a whole new level. Like because you're like, you couldn't make it any better.
There's nothing you can do.
And you're like, wow.
I think, like, in retrospect, the only thing that I can kind of make better is she was really concerned about getting the IV put in her, the needle. And like, I wanted to tell her, baby girl, like, this is going to be the least of what you're going to be concerned about, but I don't want to tell her that ahead of time.
Yeah, no, that's not smart. That's smart.
Because the other parts of it are going to be terrible.
I've had a tooth taken out. I have a bunch of root canals, no big deal. I had a tooth pulled, and it was hideous. And I was like, oh, whatever, I've had root canals, let alone one that's embedded in my jaw and breaks.
Yeah.
Nope.
Just mouth surgery in general. And I think the other thing is we've come down to the final performances of Ethan at high school. And so, starting with the musical, really the musical was the biggest emotional one for me.
Sure.
Especially the way that thing ended. And then they had a choir concert on Thursday, and then what was it?
Senior showcase.
Monday night. Was it Monday, right?
It was Monday.
Yeah, Monday night. Yeah, senior showcase. So, and Ethan had his final performances, and it's always like the past couple of years with these kids.
You said that like a curmudgeon.
Well, like
with these kids.
Like Ethan's been in the whole thing since his sixth grade, and so like watching Bella and even Ben before Ethan.
Sure, and let alone Zach, his
yeah.
best friend, or not best friend, best theater friend.
So I've had 6 years of watching a lot of these different kids, and then it really does kind of hit you. Like, this is the last time I'm probably ever going to watch Zach. This is the last time I'm probably ever going to watch, Mariah and some of these other kids that I've really enjoyed their performances and their talent and everything. And so, but it was great. Ethan had a really good performance, and I celebrate that. Now it's on to other things.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Amy and I celebrated 18 years of marriage. We had an anniversary this week. We didn't celebrate. I don't want to say we celebrated. We're going to go out this weekend.
Congrats.
Okay, but you made it sound like we're not happy about it. I wouldn't say we're celebrating.
We didn't celebrate.
We got through
It
it.
happened. It happened. Let me tell you.
No, we're going to go out this weekend, which would be fun. And more of that next week, probably. And to continue the softball saga with Maggie.
Yeah. How'd the game go tonight?
Yeah, did not go. Very rainy here. It's been very rainy here, but she got her first win the other night, and it was very exciting. I actually teared up a little bit because she's so competitive. She is so competitive, and I'm competitive to a certain point. But I don't know where she gets her competitive.
Does she ever watch
from.
you play video games?
Yeah, but even then,
being serious.
Yeah, we'll play, but when I play with her, it's kind of
Oh, you kick her butt. Competitive.
Yeah. But I kind of teared up when they won because she didn't realize that they won yet. They don't the coach the coaches don't really share what the score is during the game and all that.
Then how did you know?
Because I was keeping track, and it was pretty obvious. Because they won, it was 10-4, I think was the final score, and they were lining up to shake hands, and I looked at her, I got her attention, and I was like, "Bug, you won!" And it's she just pure joy, and then so they shook hands, and then they always run to the outfield to have a post game review with the coaches and whatnot. And she's screaming the whole time, "We won! We won!" We went to Rita's, and it was awesome. And the girls this game is I feel it's all starting to click with the girls and working together in the infield and whatnot. They made a double play. It was awesome. We were what is going on? Because up till now it's been okay, she throws the ball to first. Oh, they missed at first, and it's they're learning the game. It's 8U. It's the first level. But to watch them play and actually things starting to click, it was really fun. And she was just so excited.
Well, I think Maggie's celebration it's pure. And so there's very few things that we as adults can go, that's very pure.
It was just pure joy.
Yeah.
She was squealing, she was so excited. And I wanted her to get a win because up until now, I think this was their fourth game. And every game they've lost by one, and I'm it's gonna click, it's gonna happen, and this is the game that it happened. And then we couldn't make the game Monday night this week, but they won again. It was 13-5 3 or something like that. It was another. So they're a solid team right now.
Like the Pirates.
Yeah, just like the Pirates.
That's good.
So yeah, I can't wait to watch her play. It's been a lot of fun watching her play, and her coaches are awesome, and yeah, it's been great.
Just real quick to interject too, and not to steal your story, and I hope I don't, but Abby had a game last night, and only 8. It was in Irwin, and only 8 of her girls showed up.
Oh boy.
Oh.
So I said, "So what did you guys do?" She said, "Well, one of the girls from the other team went and played outfield for us." Sure. So I thought that was funny. They made it work.
Well, and then I not love, but it's interesting to see your two stories because you were rejoicing with your daughter and you were grieving for your daughter. And, and that's what we do. And two things can be true at once, which isn't tonight. Only one thing's true tonight. And we got yelled at.
We got yelled at by
Very little big guy coming in.
Sorry, guys.
But for me, it's a very apropos update and seguational.
That's a good word.
I'm going to look that up.
I just made it up.
I was gonna say, is that a word?
It's a segue.
I know I'm a learned man. I know all the words.
Safe passage. Segue, create a word.
I like it.
You create a word. Yeah. I use the word. So, Joe had a very big meeting on Tuesday. And we've really, Joe and I have been working and on him. And he, like his sister and like his father, is very good at reacting to what life throws their/our way. There is a great opportunity for Joe and Bella to improve upon being aggressive and making choices. And so, and I've been praying this entire calendar year for both Joe and Bella to have breakthroughs. Lord, whatever that is, they can have a breakthrough. And so Joe had a really big meeting Tuesday with ROTC, and it could have been horrific, and it was great, but it left him with choices. And it very easily could have been, they could have made a choice for him.
Sure.
But he left basically with 4 choices. And I said, man, isn't that amazing? I said, the Joe 2.0, what's it all about? Making choices. So what did God provide for you? Choices. And so now the rest of this week, he's got to go through these choices and figure out what's best and be a big boy and have meetings and information gather and do all that. So that was Tuesday. And today's Wednesday. Yes, that was yesterday. And then Bella was working her first double shift, and she had a rash on her forehead. And then last night, she's like, I think it's getting worse. It's starting to get like down to my eye. And she's kind of freaking out a little bit.
I did notice that last night. Yeah.
And so she left. I said, go, she'd already put this anti-itch cream on. And then I told her, go get a ice pack, put it on your eye. She leaves the room, and I turned to Joe, and I said, you see what happened there? He's like, what? I said, well, we just got over the hurdle with you there. Had a big breakthrough. Said, so I can't be free. gotta have something. And then even last night, it was better because of the ice pack. And then she woke up today and it was all the way down, so she had to go to urgent care. She was there and supposed to be at work. They forgot about her. Physician's assistant says, "Yep, we're going to give you a steroid prescription. I'll be right back with it." 1.5 hours later, she goes out.
Come on.
Poor little girl goes freaking out, getting texts from, she told work, I won't be in. Is that okay? Yeah, come in whenever you can. But then one of the waitresses didn't get that message. And Bella's always on time and as good of a host that they have. So that lady's texting her, are you okay? Where are you? What's going on? Bella thinks she's mad, but she's not because she really thinks Bella's in a car
using
wreck.
punctuation?
Yeah, wow, huh?
Was the person at work using punctuation?
Oh, they said, was she the punctuation? Oh, yes, dear God, probably. So Bella, poor little girl, goes out, 20-year-old woman, but goes out and says, and goes to the front desk. And they said, well, what's your name? And she said, well, I'm Bella Midlow. And they went, wow, we forgot about you.
Oh, my gosh.
Can I have 25 minutes of my life back, please?
Right. So
that makes me really mad.
But she still went to work, and she's going to be fine. And I made a bunch of food tonight, and everything's good. In our oven, when you open it, every 6 months I have to tighten a screw because the handle will jiggle. And I don't know why. And I've thought about using Loctite, but somehow I'm afraid to do that, whatever else. And on the last open, the glass just comes out. Didn't break, but it's in the 2 pieces.
Okay.
And so we go to put it back, and it doesn't go back, and it doesn't go back. And then Joe, who had picked up Bella, comes back, and now he's helping, and he's helping. He's like, we need to take the door off. And of course, Rachel immediately is like, why would you possibly know how to take the door off of an oven? And he's like, because I've done it. And I was like, this is just delightful right now. Because there's a part of me that's like, boy, you're going to break this entire oven, then you're going to feel terrible. But he did. He did know how to take the door off, and it's the two things on the side are broken, and we got to get replacement parts.
Wow.
And bing, bang, boom. So that's why I was almost late.
Wow.
So you know what? You know what all that stuff is an example of?
Noise?
One would say noise. Thank you, Chris. That's why my update was seguational.
Ah, yeah.
But before we get to that, I'll tell you what is beautiful music, and that are those who sit at the head of the table. And they do that by going to lunchtimeinrome.com and becoming a paid subscriber. And that helps us produce this podcast. You are our producers, you who sit at the head of the table.
Pretty special.
And those people are honorarily Groot, Hooked on Jesus podcast, and officially Laurie-Ann, Bethany Jaworski, Maryland, Ashley, and our good boy, Breaking 90,
Yep.
holding it down in Nebraska. And so please join them at the head of the table. It has been a minute and a half since anybody has joined them at the head of the table.
How do they do that?
They go to lunchtimeinrome.com and they become a paid subscriber. So, noise. We had speaking of crazy weeks and everything else, mine started Sunday, where we celebrated the lives of 5 people in our church who have died in the last 2 years and really had an impact on our church in one way or another. And so we just had a celebration of what God has done in their lives. And one of those people was Kathy Horensky, an absolute wonderful, highly individual.
Yeah.
And you know what? I did tell the story of the first time I came to our church, and I said, who's that white African lady up front? And I mentioned this on Sunday, that when I said that at her funeral, it did not go over well. It was a rough crowd that day, trying to break them in, a happy funeral, funny story. But they received it well on Sunday, I thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because she wears African garb sometimes.
We
'cause
knew
she-
exactly what you were talking
Oh, yeah.
about.
Right.
Plays
Yeah. If
the
you know,
clarinet.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they should know.
Yeah,
They-
right.
Well, I guess they're not
They
used
didn't come to church and see her in African
They're
garb.
not laughing at funeral type people, I guess. But when I visited Kathy a month before she died, I thought she was moments from dying. As the story goes, her sisters were sitting there, and we were talking about whether or not today has become like a modern day Babel, that God has confused language, and so people just go back to their tribes. And if you think about it, conservatives and liberals, white, black, that we have these tribes now. So I'm talking about that. And her one sister says, oh, I know, because I am very liberal. And the other sister said, and I'm conservative. And the first one goes, very. And it was so awkward and so not contentious, but it's a thing in their family, kind of a
Sounds
thing.
very scornful.
It was in there. Mm-hmm. Both delightful people. And I look across the room, and there's Kathy, riddled with stomach cancer, malnourished, on her literal deathbed. Mm-hmm. And I said, Kathy, you've always kept yourself above the political fray. I could guess either way, and I don't know if I would be right as to what her political leanings were. I said, you've always kept yourself above the political fray. But I would bet that even more so now, it seems like a lot of noise. And as I say, the story goes, it's like the room got dark and her eyes lit up. And there was this calmness and a peace about her. And she looked me dead in the eyes and she said, Jay, it's all noise. And I was like, wow, here's a woman who could be seeing Jesus either momentarily or presently.
Right. Yeah.
And she said, it's all noise. And so I shared that story that following Sunday in church. Maybe a week later, a woman in our church who we'd only known for a year shortly after her husband died is diagnosed, Evie, with thyroid and throat cancer. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, Pastor Jay, she said, I'm staying above the noise. I'm going to ignore the noise. And I remember thinking, no. The politics is the noise. Your health really matters. Put a bookmark in that. We'll come back to that part of the story later. But I thought for tonight, and one more at least, we would talk about the noise. And the fact, and we'll define it and look at it to a degree, but the fact that it is used, the noise is used in many different ways to distract, to dissuade, to divide. And, you go, well, Jay, I thought this wasn't a Christian podcast. It's Christians who do a podcast. Well, number one, it's a podcast about loving people, how to keep people from feeling alone, and a podcast about relationships. I contend that the noise goes against all four of those things.
Yeah.
And I will contend with, we're Christians doing a podcast, so we're going to talk a little bit about some Christian things this evening. And I don't know that many people are going to mind. So we shall progress.
Yeah.
I looked at 3 scripture verses. John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And I think when people read that, they think very often literally.
Physical.
Right.
Yeah.
They think temptations. That if the devil's tempting me again with whatever it is. But certainly from the very beginning of time, he's tried to destroy relationships. Would you not agree?
100%.
I mean, look at Adam and Eve in
From
the
the
garden.
moment of time. Yeah.
From the jump, relationships are under attack. We go to 2 Corinthians 4, and Brian, jump in because you started to there, but whatever.
I was gonna say even before time. I mean, he stole, he caused a rebellion in heaven. That's stealing part of God's harmony from God Himself in that rebellion.
And you know how he probably did that? I'm being cliche here. A lot of noise. I mean, he filled their heads.
Mm-hmm.
The angels that fell, with pride and with independence, and they listened to the noise.
Mm-hmm.
2 Corinthians 4:4. Satan, who is the god of this world. Should we flesh that out for people who aren't really well versed in what we'd like to call the Bible?
I think we should talk about that. It's really important because it almost seems contradictory, right? The God of this world. Oh, God's the God of this world.
Right. So what's the difference?
Satan has been given power and authority in this world. And
By who?
By God.
Okay.
And he's given him reign over this world for a short time. Not dominion. There's a big difference between authority and dominion. Mm-hmm. But he has been given authority, and we see places in the Bible where Satan goes before God and says, I want to do this. And God says, no, but you can also you can do this.
Right.
So it's not like this, he has a level of authority in here, and that's what the Bible's talking about here.
So if he is the God of this world, and he has blinded the minds, this is 2 Corinthians 4, of those who don't believe. Now, if you think about it, if we stop right there, it's amazing. We're so isolated, assuming you're listening in America.
Sure.
I hear stories of people that are like, I just want to travel the world, and people that have gone to India by themselves, women, to go travel, and then they come back and they're like, that was horrific.
Yeah.
Like, that was terrible. Like, we're so isolated by our culture that there are really nasty places. Not that America's all, fine and dandy.
Saudi Arabia is a really bad place for women.
There's a lot of bad places for a lot of bad people. And you go, how can they do that? And then you go to, missionaries that'll go and reach people and love people and everything else, and then they just get slaughtered. And it's like, how do you not see? Well, because we are in a spiritual battle. I mean, we forget that. Christians read that. Oh, our battle's not against flesh and blood, but the spiritual entities of the darkness. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. It's like what they do in some of those movies. And you're like, nah, I don't know that it is. And so, in fact, he has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand the message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. So, if the enemy can blind somebody, could he not also, in a way, drown out and cause people to be, for lack of a better term, deaf to the voice of God? Now, not if God chooses. God will always get your attention if he wants. But I don't think I'm making too big of a scriptural leap in saying if he can blind, he can also deafen. And how would he do that? Well, we'll talk about that. Well, and the thing is, in that scripture talks about for those who don't believe.
Right.
That he's blinded those who don't believe.
That's what caught me too. When I feel like, that's a convicting. We've been talking about conviction, Jay
Yep.
and I, with regard to my dad, which is a whole nother topic. But like in this, that's a convicting statement for me, because it's like, okay, well, I believe, but there's always, you still have to work at it, is how I feel. It's like, okay, you've still got to work at identifying where's the noise coming from, and what is the noise, and
Well, and
it's
that's
not
sort
that
of
the
my
noise
point.
disappears.
Right. I'm saying he does a good job, even for those who believe, distracting and dissuading and dividing with the noise.
I was listening to a recent Joe Rogan podcast where he had a lady on talking about mind control and how there are very few people in this world that aren't under some kind of mind control. And throughout the conversation, like I started to think about and actually I thanked God this morning while I'm driving around in my car as I had this thought, but the scripture about taking every thought captive. I can't remember which scripture it is, but
It's in the Bible.
it's in the Bible, but it's like, Paul, I think it's Paul, and he's talking about take every thought captive. And, I've heard that from a little kid, but it's one of these things where like, I thanked God this morning for it, because it's a discipline. And when you start to take every thought captive, you start to examine what is coming into you. This is where the power is, and this is where you can begin to filter out the noise and hear God's voice, because what the devil wants to do is he wants to bombard you with stimulus. Whereas if God's in the margin and God's in the silent and God's in maybe the dawn of the day, and God's everywhere, but like there are those places where if you get still, listen, and silent both have the same letters, just in different, arrangement.
Dropping truth on us there.
Listen and silent have the same letters. And so if Satan can bombard us, that's going to go to your first verse, John 10:10. He's going to steal your peace, because that constant bombardment is taking that, it's making you anxious, and it's filling you with noise. So I think the taking of every thought captive is one of those things that for me, it was just like, God, thank you for teaching me the discipline of that. And not that I'm great at it, but if you're not even doing that,
It's good to have a goal.
And it's good that you're aware.
it's like the door to your house or the gate to your city. Like if you just have it wide open and you're letting your southern border, if you're letting everything in, there's going to be repercussions of that. And so anyways,
Nah, I
it was
agree.
quite the diatribe.
No, it was good, and I appreciate that. I don't know how we got there, but 1 Corinthians 5:7, cast all you, what?
I don't know how we got
No,
there.
but it was
Peter.
great. It was a perfect transition.
Yeah.
But I don't remember.
Well, here, before we even transition out of it, because I was going to ask, can you define that for everybody?
What's that?
Like,
captive, that's
yes. Can you, like that notion, you kind of did, but just to clarify it for me and for people listening, like, what does that mean to take a thought captive?
I think it means to really be intentional and guard the stimulus that's constantly coming against you. And so does that mean like how many wake up and look at your phone and all of a sudden you're down
Right.
an Instagram rabbit hole for 20 minutes?
Well-
like that's the first things that you're doing every single day. What kind of, instead of hearing that peace from God and having that time of reflection, you've just now set yourself up for the rest of the day to be filled with some kind of anxiety about something that's happening in Uganda or
That's like,
Taiwan or Mexico.
so that's like the noise taking you captive.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
because you're not guarding against it. You're not guarding that thought. And so, but like it to me, it's a constant it's a constant vigilance. Your mind is your most valuable real estate, and Satan is constantly looking to get in there. And so you really do have to develop that discipline of being self-aware, being intentional. And the stimulus that I'm taking in right now is what this person's saying to me really true, or am I just nodding along because that's what I'm supposed to do? Is what this newscaster is telling me? Am I going to examine that and critically think about it, or am I just going to accept that?
Right.
I think it's just a constant evaluation.
If we go backwards 2 weeks to our last podcast, we talked about triggers, for lack of a better term. And those are external stimuli that we have no control over. and then our internal reaction to them, which we do in theory have control over, which would be, hey, I should take this external trigger, I should take that captive. And if we were just being a humanistic podcast, I need to be present with it and aware of it. But from a Christian perspective is, man, I want to go seek God in this. God, how do you feel? I've been preaching more about lately. Yeah. God, when did you go through this? Jesus, when did you go through this? Jesus, how do you feel for me right now? That's taking it captive and incorporating God into that moment. Goes back several more podcasts too. If you're not aware of your emotions, you'll be manipulated by your feelings. Mm-hmm. So taking it captive is, wait, so that guy just said that to me. I do have a high need for respect. God, am I overreacting? Waiting, being peaceful and quiet. Oh, maybe a little bit. All right. That's taking it captive.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And that's where the Holy Spirit is so vital to us. And when people don't, when the Holy Spirit's not part of your life, you can do the discipline mentally, but the Holy Spirit is ultimately the filter that is going to tell you and be proactive and say, yeah, hey, that soft little voice in my head, that's the Holy Spirit, and so I think it's a two-part thing, taking it captive here, mentally, but also letting the Holy Spirit sift that stuff.
Chris, you introduced this point, and I want to be very respectful to you, but you mentioned, the conviction.
Yeah.
And I don't need you to go into it.
Okay.
But if I may describe it and you agree or disagree with me, that as he was going through his cathartic week, there were moments of conviction and a little bit of guilt and a little bit of shame. Yes? Maybe shame's too far.
Yeah, regret.
Yes. Okay. So conviction versus regret and guilt. A little bit of guilt in there too.
A little bit of guilt.
And so we're bombarded with those types of feelings very often. To take that captive is to say, hey, God, are you showing me I could have done something better? Or is this the enemy taking a sad moment in my life and throwing gas on it so that I beat myself up? That's taking it captive. What most people do is go, either forget, where do your hurts go? So you remember a bad moment with your dad. Mm-hmm. Where does the hurt go? Well, if it goes to anger, you're just going to be like, it wasn't my fault, blah, blah, blah. If it goes to self-condemnation, you're going to go, I'm the worst person ever. But if you take it captive, you go, God, do you have a message for me in this?
Yeah, and it's almost like doing regular debriefs with yourself and with God. I think there's the proactive taking things captive, and then there's the reflection part of it, where at the end of the day or whenever you do reflect, you go, okay, what have I learned today? What didn't I do good? What could I do better? And most people don't even do that.
No. And we have to remember, when you take somebody captive, it's not just once. You have to make sure they stay penned up. And that same thing with your thoughts. Right. You want to hold them captive and continue to hold them captive.
Right.
That's a nice analogy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't look in my basement. 1 Peter 5:7. Joe's down there. 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him being God, because he cares for you. And we can stop right there for a second and say, what are people anxious about? Wide open. Let's list everything. Everything. Give specific examples. Finances. What else?
Their political party.
Woo!
The other
political party. But that's a good point, because people are anxious about their political party and why they're not doing better or more. And of course, the evil other side.
Yep. Are they too? What's their body image like? What are people thinking about them?
Relationships.
What are people not thinking about?
Relationships, achievement, performance, ability or inability to putt in disc golf. I can go on forever.
The security of my job. There's everything.
Absolutely everything. And we should cast those on him, meaning go to God with them. The very next verse, be alert and of a sober mind. Mm-hmm. What is a sober mind? I think we see that. Oh, what does that mean to you? What is a sober mind?
Clear thinking, focused, aware.
Yeah, I think of that too. But I mean, your immediate thought is not drunk or
right.
Abusing substances or whatever. But my thing is not being so consumed by, and Brian, you talked about it, like, this, you're receiving this message and you're just accepting it instead of, whether through news or whatever, or social media or whatever, you're not actually looking and thinking for yourself and then like asking God of like, what do you think of this situation, God? Or like, having directing that focus of like, is that really true? Is this really is happening? And I've seen so many stories. There are so many stories where I'll see on the news or in a headline, I'm like, that can't be true. And sure enough, when like you dig down and you look at like the original video or the original source, it's like, well, that really didn't happen. But they really inflated this one little particular aspect, and it's very frustrating.
Well, if we look at the alternative, and I agree with you, and that's a good description of it. I almost, instead of the opposite of sober being drunk, because clearly that doesn't apply to what we're talking about,
right?
But I would say the opposite of sober is volatile. That it is easily changeable. It is excitable. It's erratic. It's not consistent and sober
or numb.
Okay, or turned off. Yeah, either pole. And so rather than casting our anxieties upon him, if we do not have a sober mind, where do our anxieties go? Not ours, but ours collectively. Yeah.
They get projected on other people in really toxic ways, or they just sit in your soul and churn and churn and churn and churn.
Yeah. I mean, it goes right back to podcast 32. I have no idea which one. It goes 4 places. It's a hurt. And anxiety is a hurt. It's a lack of control. It's a lack of security. It is a volatile moment. And so it'll either go to fear, anger, guilt, self-condemnation. That's where it goes. Now, how does it, if we go back to the cup, if we really want to go back, then what comes out of all of that is that builds and builds and builds. More anxiety, more reactions, more negative reactions. All those negative things come out of the top that are behavioral issues, relationship issues, everything else, because we're not casting our anxieties upon him. We're listening to the source of all of those things, aka the noise, and it spirals and it divides. It ends with that verse. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And I would go so far as to say he's also looking for, like we said at the beginning of our time here tonight at the table, relationships to devour. We think of that so often in a very literal sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a verse that a lot of Christians aren't comfortable with. And it's also maybe not real enough. You know what I mean? That, like, I had a kid that I was working with at Presley Ridge. My job was doing wraparound to work with kids in crisis to keep them out of mental hospitals. None of my kids ever went to a mental hospital. 3 out of 4 went to prison, but that wasn't my job. My job was keeping them out of a mental hospital. And the one kid said, I want to meet Satan. First of all, I want to meet Jesus because I'll bet he got mad more than that one time. And I want to meet Satan because I'll bet he's not as bad as everybody says. And this verse came to my mind. And I thought, Satan's looking at him going, too easy. But the reality of it is he already, Satan's already gotten to him. That he's that beaten down, that he's that angry, that he's that oppositional. But, and so that's the extreme example. But I think everything in our world today is set up to divide relationships and to break relationships. And, even if we look at like counseling and things like that, they turn it and it's all about you and self-care and all these things, and not building up fixing and building up the relationships.
Right.
So can we argue that this is something, the noise is a creation of the enemy?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm in.
Took you a minute.
You're like this. I like to be contrarian. Yep. Can't find a way into.
This is not
but I can see you saying, Chris, well, this just happens.
Oh, well, no, I wouldn't say that just happens. I would.
Wait, what did you say, Jay? Sorry.
I could see Chris, if he was really being a contrarian, saying, I don't know if it's the enemy. These things just happen.
I was going to contradict, and say that I wouldn't say that. I would say, and that's, we're only.
You're contradicting my assumption of your contradiction?
Correct.
So you agree with me?
And, we're just getting into we're still defining what this is, but like I think people sometimes, for whether it's for power or for, for whatever their reasoning is, are set to divide others as well. But where that comes from, is
Satan using those people.
right.
I have this image of a symphony, and God, from the beginning, created this beautiful symphony. And when sin came into the world because of Satan, it's like everybody started to play a little bit of a different, or their own tune, or a little bit of a different tune, or Satan came and like tweaked their
I'm
fingers.
thinking they're also playing louder.
They're playing
'Cause
louder
they wanna
because
be
somebody
heard.
else is playing louder.
They're
So
There's no
always
subtlety.
do you remember when we went to Jumonville and I had a couple kids that played music, and I said, okay, everybody that has an instrument, go ahead and play something, and they all just played I say, play the first thing that comes to your mind, and it was all, I mean, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
It was noise.
noise.
Yeah.
And then I said, all right, now you start to play a G, and you start to. And eventually I got them to the point where
Look
they were
at
all
you.
playing a song.
A regular maestro.
And it's like kind of the opposite. And it was like, that's kind of where God wants us to get to. And ultimately when Jesus comes back, he's going to set everything right. And we all will be playing in the same song. But until then, it's a bunch of people playing whatever they want, competing with each other. It's the way I see it.
So, in that same vein, and going backwards last week again to triggers, you mentioned Jumonville. And when I spoke there now probably 12 years ago, and they're like, yeah, you're going to speak at J-Town. And I was like, it's not a town. It's not Jamon Town.
Yeah.
You can call it J-Ville. That's a little weird, but still better than J-Town. And people would, I used to get so angry. All right, but we're back.
Side quest.
So yeah, the noise. I think there's three major areas that it affects, and one is your own peace and your own focus on God. Now you say, "Well, I don't believe in God." Well, precisely. Then He's already won in that regard. But just for your own self, your own sense of peace, your own relationship with God, the more you're listening to the noise. And again, next time at the table, we'll focus more on what is in fact the noise and what isn't the noise. But I mean, it's just not good for you.
Right.
I mean, remember a couple of years ago now, maybe 18 months, where I encouraged everyone in our church to spend 5 minutes in silence, not praying, just in silence. And then there were people that were like, do you know how loud my house is? I didn't make it 30 seconds and all that kind of stuff. Man, I think you lose that. I think you lose that peace. You lose that focus. How many times is your prayer like, hey, God, it's been a while? And you don't have that because why? You're distracted by what? Well, the noise. Number two, and the biggest one, and actually number three is also pretty much the same as number one. But number two is the relationships. I think your relationships that you already have, they're going, especially if we're sticking with politics. It's even if the people in your world you have relationships with are on quote unquote your team, the more you're talking about that, why should that matter? You could be talking about their life. You could be talking about your life. You could be talking about their loved ones, how to build that up, everything else. The more you let all that other stuff in, it isn't going to be good, let alone the people that you have a relationship with. The number of people who have said things to me politically, and I just want to say to them, why do you assume you know? Why do you assume you know what I believe and what I don't believe?
Yeah.
And, why do you think I'm okay with this? Now, I did... No. So, how'd you like that for a bail? It's pretty good. Then, potential new relationships. If you walk around listening to the noise and you are tossed back and forth by the ebb and flow, again, mostly politics, but it can be whatever. Say the noise to you is sports and you are a super passionate sports guy and all you do is talk sports. Well, is a bookworm going to want to just get up and get to know you? No.
Right.
That's what defines you. And lastly, for those of us who have decided to follow God, through Jesus Christ and the power of his Holy Spirit, we should be in the business of being used by him to love and serve others. Well, if you're being tossed back and forth by the noise and by, all that stuff, how good are you going to be at that? I would say not much. I think that's a big injury to the, from the noise.
About a year ago, when Amy and I came back from our marriage intensive, and we were talking about like brain for one, brain for two, like if you are so focused on the noise, I was going to say brain for one, but I think it's almost like a distorted brain for two, because you're like, oh, it's me and the noise. It's me. It's where we are. I'm focused on that, and that's where my priority lies. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like and you can't get out of that. But it's not really brain for two. It's brain for one. But like, you can't get out of that, I guess, survival mode of trying to just be okay in order to actually be beneficial and helpful and loving to anybody around you. Right? Is that fair?
For sure. And that goes back to the origin story with Kathy of the whole Tower of Babel thing. You can't begin to think that these other people have a good perspective, or these people's lived experiences might be different. And so you're not going to be used by them to reach them, because this is my team here. It's my tribe. This is all I do. And so if the first one is your own sense of peace and your relationship with God sort of going upward, then the second one is your relationships, either that are currently existing, that could potentially be new, or be used by God in a way to love other people. The third is your ability to even hear from God coming downward. So it ruins your relationship with God going up, but also clouds your relationship with God coming down. Because what if there's that guy that isn't on your team that he listens to different noise than you do, and God's telling you to, if you're that cognizant, you're really messed up. And God's like, I need you to go love him. And you're like, no, can't do that. You're not even hearing him do that. It's not even in your purview. It's not even in your priority list. So moving forward, we're going to define really what is the noise, and look a little bit more into how that noise, what we can do to avoid the noise. Avoid the noise.
Avoid the noise.
Or avoid the noid.
I was just, yep. Mm-hmm. Was that dominoes?
Dominoes.
This is very important. I'm sorry.
No, it's important. No, I mean, that's about all I have, but I'm very passionate about this noise. I've been thinking and praying about it more. And even just like Joe's big meeting on yesterday, at school. And it's like, well, either God's in charge of all this or he's not, and the fears, the anxieties, the what ifs, well, that's all noise. All right, what am I going to focus on? Am I going to focus on the noise? Or is God in charge of him just as much as he's in charge of me? All right. And so it's just been fun to have it apply and to really focus on what isn't noise then? What is the voice of God? Mm-hmm. So we'll be looking at that in the next couple of weeks.
I think it might be something to think about, part 2 / maybe even a part 3, like dissecting internal noises versus external noises. Because like the fear and anxiety, not that they're not related, but like there's those fear and anxieties that build up inside of you because you're worried about Joe, or you're worried, we all have things on our minds. But then there's like the constant actual external noise that in this day and age we are just like literally hearing, physically, it's all around us.
Yeah.
I don't know, something to think about.
Can I share some noise with you guys that I've experienced during this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
This whole time, like, is Audacity still working? Is it still going?
And it is.
This is like the fourth week it's worked. It's gonna go down. It's definitely gonna go down. But I'm like, well, God's given me another, solution if it does go down. So I don't know. I don't know why I'm worried so much.
But that has literally made it hard for you to like focus.
Sometimes, yeah, because I'll check and I'll go, and then like it'll be kind of an illusion. Like it looks like it stops. I'm like, oh. No, it's still going. Okay. All right. Okay. It's so stupid. It's noise.
Breaking 90 sends his condolences to you, Chris.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
And he prays that your family will find peace and comfort.
Man, Breaking 90. Good dude.
Yeah.
Good dude.
He sits somewhere around the head of the table.
I thought okay. You're with me that didn't sound right.
Come on.
You said he's hitting the head around the table.
Anyway.
And
He doesn't sit around the head. He
and
sits
hooked
at the
on-
head of the table.
And Hooked on Jesus said, I have returned. How are y'all? We're great.
There are a few things we like more than the declarative statements in the YouTube feed.
I have returned.
Josh Hughes was here. That was big for a while.
Josh.
Phyllis Feeney Johnson.
Phyllis Feeney Johnson is here.
Yep.
Sorry to those of you who joined late or we started early. So,
little bit.
Eh.
Not even that.
And by that you mean Marilyn and Bob.
Yeah. Well, but and then Groot's on now, and
So he's caught it. He thinks,
yeah,
I'll catch
he-
the second
right.
half.
Yeah. Now we're done.
Hit that rewind button a little bit.
But you can go to,
It's all recorded.
It's all there.
where's that at?
YouTube, Lunchtime in Rome. And look up episode 283 because I believe that's what this was. Next week. No, 284. What are we on? I've been out. I'm
Just
sorry.
read that out. Just read that out.
Just read
the
this?
script, Chris.
This says
Just read the script.
This says Eric will say. That's it for episode 284.
That's because
There
you're
it
not
is.
here that often. So it was stuck on Eric.
Join us next week. Is it next week? Are we 2 in a row?
As far as I know.
Yes. For episode 285. Between now and then, give us a like or follow on social media and visit us at lunchtimeinrome.com. While there, take our relational needs questionnaire. And as always, thanks for joining us at the table for Lunchtime in Rome.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.